which is going to be an evening for saluting our sisters, which is the theme for Black History Month. I'd like to, first of all, welcome you all here and also the people online, but also I'd like to give a shout out to Connect Ebony from the USA. So I just wondered, can we just see who's online? Because from America, just say hi.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Nice
Hi,
to meet you
Sharon.
all. Thank you for the invite.
No, is that not working? There you go. So just want to say hi to the Connect Ebony out there in the USA. So hi. So we've got Ellen, we've got Nicola, we've got Nataka. So they're all from the Americas office there. So that's great that our Americas Connect Ebony is able to join us. So thank you very much. And please feel free to host questions in the chat as well. So we make sure that you all feel connected with us over here in the UK. So thank you for joining.
No problem. Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So as I said, the theme for this evening is saluting our sisters, and the perspective that we're going to take is around intersectionality. We feel that's very important because it describes some of the barriers that as female women of colour that we go through. So to that end, we have our keynote speaker, who's going to be Carlette Norwood, and we've got Margot, who's going to be chairing for us as well. She'll introduce the panelists so that you know everybody that's going to be on the panel. But before we go, I want to just kind of go through some kind of housekeeping for you. So we've got toilets just behind me, so you go to the end here, turn right. There is no fire alarm today, so if you do hear a fire alarm, it is real. And we go out the front and we turn right and we walk towards the courtyard area where that's our muster area. So I think that's all I need to let you know for this evening. Also, I just want to let you know that there's some QR codes on your seat as well. If you could scan that, there's some questions there. And it's asking you, what would you like to see change? And also, what will you commit to doing personally to do different tomorrow? Because why we want to do that is to collect all these ideas that come out of this talk, to work with the Association for Black Engineers, who we've collaborated with this evening, to put together a workshop for what we want to do. We don't want this just to be a discussion for this evening. We want to take it forward. So working with the AFBE, so Association for Black Engineers, we're going to take this forward with their other partners and put together a workshop. So please do scan the QR code and put in your ideas and your themes about what you'll do different and what you'll commit to. So on that note, I'm going to hand across to Kate Hall, who's on our UK, India, Middle East and Africa regional board, to give the proper introduction, because mine was just the housekeeping.
Well, good evening. It's lovely to see so many people here today and welcome everyone online. I was sat this weekend with my 9-year-old son and he was reading in a magazine and I peered at what he was reading. And it was an article announcing that Wales has become the first nation in the UK to mandate Black history lessons across its national curriculum to reflect those diverse experiences and contributions of our ethnic communities, both in the past and present in Wales. And he had a very bemused look on his face. And I had a very interesting conversation with him, and I had to explain to him that history does need rewriting. It's been pretty poorly written, and it's missing much of women's and Black history achievements and contributions. So I'm both really proud to be here today, both as a parent and as a board member, to celebrate Black History Month, which takes place in October in the UK, and was first celebrated 35 years ago in 1987. So Black History Month is an opportunity for us to celebrate historic Black figures and culture, and a chance for us to think about how each one of us can contribute to building an inclusive culture for everybody. And this year's theme, as Sharon has shared, about celebrating our sisters, highlights the crucial role that we all play in making and shaping history and building communities. But what's the business perspective on Black History Month? And as a business leader, let me share some facts. The McKinsey reported that ethnically diverse companies outperform by 35% above national industry median. And the McGregor-Smith Review Race in the Workplace report said the potential benefit for the UK economy from full representation of BAME individuals across the labour market through improved participation and progression is estimated to be £24 billion a year. And the Institute for Employment Studies reported that that looked at career deflection driving women and those from ethnic minorities away from engineering, reported more than half, 55% of ethnic minorities abandon their career, in contrast to 39% of white people. In the UK, and I appreciate we've got colleagues from the US, 1 in 8 of the working population is from ethnic minority backgrounds, yet only 1 in 16 are in company boardrooms. And forecasts show that by 2051, the proportion of workers from the UK from ethnic minority backgrounds will have risen to 1 in 4 of the working population. A huge underutilised talent pool that needs to be unlocked. So I'll end by quoting from Robert Landman, a colleague that I've worked with who co-founded the non-profit and anti-racist organisation, the Black Leadership Group. And he said, if Britain is to succeed socially and economically, we have to use the whole talent pool. Racism is an uncomfortable conversation to have, and it's important to give people the ability to move beyond the awkward stage and actually say, right, we've done that part, now what cultural changes are we going to make in our organisation? And that's where we are, and that's where I am. So today and tonight we've got an amazing panel that are going to share some fantastic insights. I've had the privilege of meeting many of them online. I think Margot is going to introduce them individually first, and then I'll hand over to the keynote speaker, Dr. Collett. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Kate and Sharon, and welcome to everyone that is here today and also online. I'm Margot Day. I'm the Group General Counsel at ARUP here. Means I head up the legal function and I get to deal with all of the things that no one likes to speak about. So everyone loves talking to me, but it's my pleasure to be here today and to talk about such an important issue. You know, having grown up in the UK and experienced a lot through my career, it's really good that the Black History Month theme is about saluting our sisters and the intersectionality issue that I think many of us face. So I'm going to start by introducing our keynote speaker, who I have had the pleasure of meeting tonight, as well as her lovely daughter. So first up, it's Carlette Norwood, Dr. Carlette Norwood, I should say. She has completed her PhD recently from the University of Birmingham, specialising in racial microaggressions and historical and racial trauma. She moved here from Washington, D.C. 6 years ago, and has recently handed on the baton for her daughter to also start studying at Birmingham University. I think what we're going to hear tonight is kind of a diverse experience of audiences in both the US and Britain. And I think the ability that she's had in terms of delivering anti-racism lectures in many universities around the UK and challenging racism is really welcome in terms of us being able to touch on this issue. Her most recent publication is a qualitative study that explores supervisor relationships with minority ethnic postgraduate researchers. Dr. Norwood is also a certified life coach and a PhD mentor to minority ethnic students. So I'm really looking forward to hearing all about her this evening. And a key interesting fact about her is that she is opening up her own theatre company. So save your questions on that for the networking session later. But I'll hand you across to Dr. Carlette Norwood.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Good evening. Before I get started this evening, I'd like to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to ARUP, especially Sharon Lee and the Association of Black Engineers for inviting me to speak here tonight. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to this distinguished panel of colleagues and those of you who are streaming this event online. It is a profound honor to share this platform with all of you. I'm always eager to celebrate the successes of Black women and to promote our excellence. Doing so during Black History Month makes this evening all the more special. As you may discern from my slight Southern accent, and as mentioned previously, I hail from Washington, D.C. I arrived in the UK in 2017, just over 6 years ago, to commence my doctoral studies. As a sociologist, I have dedicated myself to the study of anti-racism and historical trauma. My journey began as a teenager advocating for racial equality for Black women. And as I ventured into higher education, I delved deeper into understanding how persistent exposure to racism affects the mind and body. My doctoral research was an interdisciplinary comparative study of the similarities and differences in how Black American women and Black British women experience racism. The striking realization from this research was that there are overwhelmingly more similarities than differences. Many narratives shared by my participants were eerily alike, often using the same exact language. It's compelling to look around this room and at this platform and at the online attendees, and we realize that we as Black women have likely all experienced racism in similar ways. It transcends geography, occurring in the same situations with the same people, doing the same activities and chores. We share these experiences. The term intersectionality is frequently invoked these days, but tonight, as we salute our sisters, I want to remind you that it was first coined in 1989 by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, a Black scholar. She originally used the term to refer to the intersection of racial discrimination and sexism, particularly for Black women. However, over time, this term has been broadened to include the interplay of race, class, gender, and other individual characteristics. Similarly, Black feminist Moya Bailey coined the term misogynoir, specifically addressing the misogyny directed toward Black women where race and gender intersect. These terms are essential because mainstream feminism often overlooks and excludes Black women. Intersectionality and misogynoir provide frameworks to articulate the unique experiences of gendered racism that Black women face. Tonight, I salute our sisters, Kimberly Crenshaw and Moya Bailey. Throughout history, Black women have been pioneers and leaders in anti-racism and equal rights movements. From the days of slavery to modern times, Black women have been at the forefront of revolts, rebellions, and civil rights movements. They've led revolts against cruel slave owners during the transatlantic slave trade and played a pivotal role in the Underground Railroad. They organized the U.S. Civil Rights Movement and inspired the global Black Lives Matter movement. Black women have always been a powerful force against oppression. However, Black women represent more than advocates and activists. They are trailblazers, leaders, and innovators. I'm not fond of the term BAME. I'd never heard of it before I moved to the UK. But for the sake of simplicity in discussing the following statistics, I will use it. For those who may not be familiar, especially my comrades in America, the term BAME stands for Black, Asian, and Minority Ethnic. According to STEMwoman.com, since 2015, the number of women graduating in core STEM subjects has increased from 22,000 to 24,000 in 2019. While this may suggest progress, the percentage of women in STEM has consistently fluctuated between 25, 24, and 26% over the years, and there's clear evidence of a leaky pipeline and poor retention for BAME women in top-level STEM jobs. For instance, a report by BCS revealed that female and BAME individuals were likely to have roles of responsibility despite higher education levels. In 2019, only 9% of BAME IT specialists held director-level positions, and 32% were managers or team leaders, while white IT professionals made up 43%. The imbalance is even more striking in sectors like manufacturing, where only 8% of IT specialists were BAME in 2019. The underrepresentation of Black women and other minority ethnic women is glaring in STEM, higher education, and the public and private sectors. In engineering in 2018, Engineering UK report found that only 8.1% of engineers were from Black and minority ethnic groups, and Black and minority ethnic women comprise less than 2% of all engineering professionals. The lack of diversity in STEM has repercussions, especially in technology, where the use of technology in our daily lives has surged due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We must ask ourselves and our organizations why these disparities persist. What's the root problem? Why aren't BAME girls and young women encouraged to explore STEM disciplines? There are multiple factors, including psychological and external environmental variables, mentorship experiences, academic attitudes, and stereotypes. Representation and visibility matter. Having inspirational role models, allies, or mentors can greatly impact young BAME women in STEM, fostering a sense of belonging. Mara Tavadswa Makoni, the spokeswoman for the UK's Association for Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers, also believes it is down to a lack of representation and visibility. I quote, This applies in technical roles, and even more so when it comes to women in leadership positions in engineering firms, end quote. As a result, she says, quote, there are too few women to act as champions and mentors to young women, end quote. Having inspirational role models, allies, or mentors can have a hugely positive impact on BAME women in STEM, increasing their sense of belonging. Having BAME women in positions that can influence leadership and decisions, who are also visible externally, can help young BAME women to picture themselves in these positions. The importance of belonging is supported by research conducted by the STEM Education Journal, which states, gender and ethnicity can impact feelings of acceptance, with students from underrepresented groups reporting more uncertainty about whether they belong in their academic fields than students from well-represented demographic groups. Despite the abysmal US and UK lack of BAME women representation, it should be noted that in 2021, the country of Georgia had the highest share of women employed in STEM fields, with 55.6% of those employed in STEM being women. Mongolia, Kiribati, Dominican Republic, and Cambodia rounded out the top 5 countries employing the highest share of women in STEM fields. However, when we examine leadership positions, the numbers become even more dismal. Black women comprise slightly more than 2% of tenured professors and less than 2% of full professors in academia. The disparities are stark, and they underscore the need for change. In accordance with data from HESA, the disparities in academic representation are stark and demand our attention. There are currently 166,000 white academic staff, with 18,000 holding professorial positions. In contrast, there are only 23,000 academic staff from Asian backgrounds, of which a mere 1,500 have achieved the status of professor. Shockingly, when we look at the representation of Black professors, the numbers are staggeringly low. Out of 5,205 academic staff members, only a minuscule 160, which amounts to just 1%, are Black professors in the UK. To put this into context, the percentage of academic staff who are EU nationals stands at 17%, while non-UK nationals from non-EU countries comprise 15%. These figures alone outnumber the combined count of Black and Asian academic staff. Allow me to share a personal perspective. When I arrived in the UK in 2018, the situation for Black British female professors was dire. There were merely 25 Black British female professors in UK universities, marking the smallest group of professors in terms of both race and gender. In 2019, Dr. Nicola Rolock's report revealed a distressing culture of bullying and stereotyping that compels Black academics to exert themselves more, employing mentally draining strategies to merely survive in their daily roles and responsibilities. These statistics clearly suggest that despite working harder, and in some cases for less compensation, Black women are not proportionally rewarded with promotions to more senior levels. white women in academia notably outpace black women in terms of career development. Fast forward to today. In 2023, more than 5 years later, the number of black women professors has barely moved the needle, with only 41 out of 22,000 academic staff members achieving this distinction. It's crucial to acknowledge that many of these well-deserving women were promoted during the Black Lives Matter movement as universities performatively scrambled to perform inclusivity measures. These promotions, while long overdue, were nevertheless a vital step toward increased representation and recognition. Tonight, I extend a salute to our sisters in STEM and academia who have not only demonstrated exceptional resilience, but have also persevered against systemic obstacles, making their achievements all the more remarkable. We must continue to champion diversity, challenge biases, and work collectively to bring about lasting change in academia. The label of the strong black woman is a complex and double-edged concept often ascribed to black women. In my doctoral thesis, I explore the multifaceted nature of this term, particularly when it's applied by non-black individuals. The archetype of the strong black woman portrays black women as possessing unwavering psychological and emotional strength, suggesting that they can endure misfortune, trauma, and abuse independently without needing nurturing or support during times of crisis. At times, this stereotype can be seen as uplifting and empowering. Some black women I spoke with expressed pride in identifying as strong black women, and mothers described instilling this sense of strength in their daughters. However, when viewed through the lens of racism and racial abuse, this label evokes various emotional responses, including feelings of disgust, anger, and resentment among some of my participants. Extended exposure to such stereotypical labeling can result in tremendous pressure, which can have adverse consequences for the mental and physical health of black women. Several participants in my study expressed being tired of being strong and viewed the term strong black woman as a form of racialized abuse. They saw it as an excuse employed by some white individuals to persist in microaggressive behavior, cruelty, insensitivity, and an overall lack of concern for the mental well-being of black women. This potentially damaging labeling of being strong operates as a form of gaslighting and a racially motivated obstruction that hinders black women from expressing normal emotional reactions and responses. In her 2013 article, Black Women's Post-Slavery Silence Syndrome, Dr. Patricia A. Broussard highlights the historical systemic silencing of black women and their experiences of racial trauma. She argues that complex systems like racism perpetuate a culture of oppression and suppression of black women and their voices, leaving a long-lasting impact on their mental and emotional well-being. Consequently, when black women exhibit emotions or assertiveness, particularly in the workplace, they are often negatively labeled as aggressive, loud, boisterous, attitudinal, difficult to work with, or simply the angry black woman. This paradox places an undue burden on black women, expecting them to be strong but not express anger, as if anger is not a valid sign of strength. White women, in contrast, are often praised, celebrated, and more importantly, rewarded for their assertiveness in business and the workplace. When black women demonstrate similar qualities, they are systematically penalized or stripped of their recognition. Personally, I have chosen to embrace the label. Yes, I am strong most of the time, but I am human, just like my white female colleagues. I will not suppress my emotional responses merely to accommodate others' comfort with my reactions. Yes, I am angry, and I have every right to be angry when I'm compelled to navigate a world dominated by white supremacy, where I am not treated fairly based on the merits of my work ethic, abilities, and talent. I embrace the angry black woman label, but not in the way mainstream society defines it. I define my emotional responses to racism and oppression on my terms. Tonight, we extend our salute to our sisters, including Dr. Broussard and the 32 courageous women who shared their stories with me. These stories amplify the urgent need to challenge stereotypes and biases and provide an opportunity for Black women to define and embrace their own identities, emotions, and responses. Throughout history, Black women have displayed remarkable resilience, leading slave revolts, facilitating the escape of the enslaved to freedom, and tirelessly advocating for civil justice. Resilience is a common thread that links our ancestors to contemporary Black women. However, this resilience has come at a significant cost, one that we have been forced to pay. The renowned sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois, the first Black American to attain a PhD and graduate from Harvard University, introduced the concept of double consciousness. We all share similar life stresses, such as financial burdens, employment challenges, relationship issues, parenting, and navigating workplace dynamics. Dr. Du Bois argued that in addition to these common challenges, Black people contend with the added stress that stems from simply being Black. Throughout history and even today, Black individuals have been subjected to systemic, institutional, environmental, and structural racism, a complex system that rewards and benefits those who perpetuate our oppression. The very institutions that discriminate against us today were founded on generational fortunes amassed during the transatlantic slave trade. These fortunes, built on the enslavement of African people, continue to uphold some of the most insidious forms of racism against Black and minority ethnic communities. The statistics I mentioned earlier underscore the glaring disparities in the representation of Black women in academia and STEM, a testament to this deeply embedded racism. Much like the labels of strong Black woman and angry Black woman, the term resilience has also become a catchphrase that denies Black women the privilege of rest and respite, often leading to further stereotypes of laziness. Like our white counterparts, Black women juggle numerous roles in their personal and professional lives. However, they must navigate through the tumultuous waters of racial discrimination and hatred. From a young age, Black women learn to moderate their voices, control facial expressions and body language, suppress emotions, and adjust their behavior to avoid being perceived as aggressive or intimidating. They have learned to stifle their anger to avoid being labeled as having an attitude and to control their facial expressions to escape accusations of not being a team player. These are real-life examples of the resilience Black women exhibit daily. They are resilient because each day they rise to confront the challenges of racial discrimination and oppression that permeate their lives within the mainstream. As an American, I am honored to celebrate two Black History Months. In the United States, Black History Month falls in February, which ironically is the shortest month of the year. And here in the UK, we celebrate it in October. This year, I'm exceptionally proud to mark Black History Month as we pay tribute to our sisters. While every month should inherently be a celebration of Black history, just as every month is a reflection of white history, we must seize these designated moments to acknowledge the incredible contributions of Black women. Black women, the super women who preceded me, stand beside me, and will follow me, have dedicated their lives to the advancement of all Black people with a special focus on Black women. They have left an indelible mark on the world through their knowledge, skills, and abilities. In every corner of the globe, Black women are doing, saying, and creating remarkable things every single day. In conclusion, I want to extend my gratitude to those who stand in solidarity with and defend Black women through allyship. However, it's important to remember that allyship is not about the allies themselves. It's about the individuals they support. Allyship is not a self-appointed role. You must be invited to the picnic. You just can't show up with your picnic basket and expect to occupy space. Mere claims of allyship are insufficient. Allyship is a verb. It requires action. To be a true ally, you must be unwaveringly anti-racist. This means you need to speak up for and stand with BAME women when accusations of racism arise. You must advocate for the advancement and promotion of BAME women in their respective fields. You must be ready to challenge racist conversations in both casual and professional settings. You must understand the struggles BAME women face under the burden of racism and refrain from labeling them as difficult, aggressive, or angry. But above all, you must listen. Sometimes silence is more powerful than words. And finally, before I take my place on the panel, I would like to salute my sisters by quoting the lyrics written by the legendary songstress and pianist Alicia Keys. Everywhere I'm turning, nothing seems complete. I stand up and I'm searching for the better part of me. I hang my head from sorrow, state of humanity. I wear it on my shoulders, gotta find the strength in me. 'Cause I am a superwoman. Yes, I am. Yes, she is. Even when I'm a mess, I still put on a vest with an S on my chest. Oh yes, I'm a superwoman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carlette Norwood. Lots for us to think about there and for us to also discuss this evening. So can we give a round of applause again, just say thank you. So I've now got the pleasure of introducing our panellists for this evening. I've already introduced Dr. Carlette Norwood, so I'd ask if you could come up and join us on the panel. I decided not to let everyone sit up here at the beginning to sweat under the lights because it can get quite hot next to that screen. And then I'd also like to introduce Jonathan Fasciano. So Jonathan, who joins us, is a director from Dash House Group. He's a founding director of the Dash House Group, a sustainable architecture and structural engineering studio that builds and reimagines less impactful spaces to deliver affordable and sustainable homes. Jonathan is a course tutor at the Architectural Association in London, teaching sustainable structural design for second and third year students. And he's also an industry engagement lead for the AFBE UK, who are also sponsoring this event tonight. Jonathan is passionate about advocating for social justice. So please can you welcome Jonathan to the panel. Next, I'd like to welcome Hasna Shaddad. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Great, I have. Hasna works for ARUP. She works in our blast engineering and structural resilience team. She's a dedicated member of the blast engineering and structural resilience team, and she comes from a strong background in mechanical engineering and is a computational expert. With her experience in computational fluid dynamics, we'll let her explain about that later, Hasna has transitioned to specialising in modelling blast wave propagation within the built environment for various blast engineering projects. Beyond her technical work, Hasna also demonstrates a passion for community engagement and STEM education, and since 2014, she has initiated and managed multiple outreach programs across the UK, aimed at teaching and mentoring underprivileged children, fostering their interest in STEM, and helping them pursue rewarding careers in the field. Welcome to Hasna. And last, but by no means least, I'd like you to welcome Marissa Coleman to the stage as well. Marissa is manager of the CT Group in their advisory practice. She was appointed to that role in May 2022. Marissa previously worked at the House of Commons as a senior advisor specialising in foreign affairs. Her most notable work includes research and strategy on the Genocide Amendment Bill and also the Telecommunications Bill on a national level, changing in the housing algorithm. She has published several political articles on domestic and foreign affairs issues. And during COVID-19 pandemic, when she was working for the government, she assisted in the rollout of the NHS app as part of the core team and leading the business recovery group for the Isle of Wight. Marissa has several business and financial management posts over a 15-year career, and she has also worked within the hospitality industry at Hilton Worldwide, where she was the executive responsible for EMEA and also APAC. I guess if I look at our panel, and I'm really looking forward to getting this conversation started, I think that the theme that we're going to try to focus on tonight is exactly what Dr. Carlette said, challenging stereotypes and bias, and how we can address our own identities. And there are going to be various questions that I have already prepared that I'm going to pose to the panellists. Because there's so many of them, and because of the time that we have, we just want to make sure that there's sufficient time to have full answers. So I'll probably engage each of them in particular questions and direct questions towards you. so that it's not too static and staid in terms of me just having questions that I pre-prepared. We've also got questions that are being raised online, and what I'm going to try to do is to make sure that we take both questions in the room and online, as well as some of the pre-prepared questions, just to make sure we can try and keep it dynamic. So firstly, can we give another round of applause to all of our panelists? Just I guess as I heard you speaking there, and I spoke earlier about myself being the ARUP Group General Counsel, and I'm a chair to the board, and I have 2 sons, and I've really loved working in the ARUP world and being connected in with the Connect race. But we also, we need to address that there's a lot of roles that you've all undertaken that mean that you assist outside of the workplace in terms of how we can uplift others. And I know that, through work that we do in terms of education, in terms of making sure that we connect into, professional organisations, we're all trying to lift up that standard. And I think as we come out in our discussions tonight, it'd be really good to get some of that wider experience from you all, just so that others can understand the different ways in which we can continue to salute, both from those that are quite young to those that are quite a bit older, let's put it that way. So coming on to the theme this year, just in terms of, there's a political context within the work environment, which Dr. Carlett, you noticed in terms of black women can sometimes feel invisible and unheard, despite being a strong black woman, that carries that identity. So in terms of the theme for this year and saluting our sisters and intersectionality, how does it make you feel, and what does it mean for you in terms of the theme of Black History Month? And I'm going to address that specifically to Marissa and Hasna.
I think when I think about this theme, it's very much a lived experience, right? And sometimes that's the best way to go about really understanding a concept, a theory. It's have you experienced it in your life? I won't bore you half to death with the long story, but I'll run through part of my life at a rapid pace. So when I was a really, really young child, I was going to school in Canary Wharf, and I really loved acting, and I really wanted to be in this play. It was the normal Christmas play with Jesus and the fairies and so on. But I didn't get to be in the play, even though I knew all the lines. And the teachers told me it was because I didn't look like the characters. And it was only later on in life I kind of thought, what the hell does that mean? But I didn't, at that time, I was a child, I didn't really understand. And I remember my mom took me to the play. I can see in her face she was really upset because I knew all of the lines. But I think back then she didn't really know how to explain it to me because I was so young, and I think she didn't want to burst this bubble that I was in. Obviously she did later on. Then we fast forward a few years, I wanted to do some modeling. Actually, I fancied myself nice enough to go on the catwalk stage. And I did walk for London Fashion Week, but it was a really horrible road getting there because I had to prove myself over and over and over. And most of the times when I went for the hair and makeup, they didn't quite have the tools that I need for my hair, and neither did they have the makeup colors to suit me, so I always have to bring my own makeup, and I kept thinking, this is really unfair. But I made it. I did some catalog shoots, and I did some magazine stuff, and everyone said, wow, you did it, you against the odds. But I was really lonely. I was just very, very lonely, because it was just me. And then I went into hotel management, but I was lonely. And then I qualified as an accountant, but I was really lonely. And then I got into politics. I was okay there. There's a few of us. But then I got into real consultancy. This is the big deal. This is the highlight of my career. I'm peaking, yeah. And I'd get into these rooms, and I would be the only person who looks like me. Sometimes I'd just be the only female, full stop. And I would have directors who say to me, Marissa, you should be really proud. You're trend-setting. You're the first. You're this. You're that. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I don't really feel proud. What I feel is lonely, because it's just me. And I want desperately for there to be more of me. So what do I mean by our concept? Intersectionality, what does that mean to me? it seems to be that in my lived experience, it means finding my place. And it's very difficult to do when you don't have enough people to look up to, as you rightly say in your speech. You don't have the right amount of people to lead the way for you, and you're desperately trying to navigate your way, and you have all of these things around you. As time went along, I learned how to alter my own accent. I did it on purpose so that my accent would be reasonable, I suppose. And I dress a certain way, and I act a certain way, and I behave a certain way. At home, whole different story, of course, because I'm free there. But should I really have to? And that's the question I ask myself all the time when I sit in a massive boardroom and I'm at the height of my career and I'm talking to ministers and Secretary of State, and I'm the first person in my family to do this. And I should be proud, but really what I am is lonely.
Thank you. I just want to check whether everyone can hear us okay, and whether everyone can hear us online. Does that need to be read? Perfect.
I hope so. That was so impassioned.
It was so impassioned. I mean, it got me there, and so I was like, I really hope everyone can hear this.
Yes, we heard every
Thank you
word.
for that. That's quite heartfelt, and resonates, I think, with quite a few people in the room. Hasna, can I get your perspective on that as well, please?
Yeah, that's quite tough to follow. Yeah, I think the way that I look at intersectionality is I think it's quite interesting in the sense that it allows us to look at different layers of oppression and basically kind of look at things through the individual as identity and characteristics. And I think it's been quite good in terms of like raising awareness, and so we understand the different issues that people are going through and what's going on. But the thing I always look at when I come across these sort of concepts is sort of what's the next step? Like, where do we go from here? Intersectionality has taken us so far, but like, how do we sort of enact change, and what does that sort of mean? And I think I keep hearing a lot about sort of representation. And I think representation is good in terms of being able to see yourself in a position, and that's definitely for me, like, especially coming to ARUP, like I didn't know, I was in academia before where it wasn't so diverse. My thing with representation is that we are the most diverse in the corporate world than we've ever been, and hate crime is on the rise. We have growing global inequality. We have all these different things. So we have to think beyond, personally, I think beyond representation. I think also with representation, you have to look at things through a critical lens. I think that it is very good to sort of, talking about representation, but the thing is, like, just as an example, we have people at the moment, women of color, who are saying things who hold positions of power, who are saying things about immigration that I would never in a million years agree with, and I'm never going to agree with them. Yeah. And I don't feel like I should support them because we share similar characteristics. And so I think when it comes to all of these things, we have to think about things critically, and we have to think about why we're doing things. And also, when we have representation, when we have people in positions of power, what are they putting forward? What are they saying? What are they this? If I'm not going to support someone because we share the same skin tone, to me that's a racialized motivation, and I think we deserve better than that. The other thing I probably say is always looking at things from a historical point of view. I look at when change has happened in the past, sort of, we spoke about sort of civil rights movements and all these different things, and also independence movements globally in Africa and all over the world. And the thing that I look at in these situations is people coming together, demanding a change, going forwards, I think I'm going to leave it there. But coming together and collectivization.
Thank you. Thank you. Two very powerful perspectives there, and one I welcome. I'm going to raise one more question, and I'll take a question in the room. So just warming you up in case you want to raise your hand. But I think there's something that you already focused on as part of your speech, and I think it came out there in terms of when Marissa was saying about, feeling very alone, and you can be in situations and be the only one, but that doesn't necessarily make you feel empowered. And you did describe how black women are portrayed already in terms of, the strong black woman, but what this can actually mean. But what impact has this had on the mindset in terms of confidence and a belief in total inclusion? And I'm going to address those questions to Dr. Carlette and also to Hasna, because it's a point that you just raised. So really the question is, what's the impact in terms of mindset, confidence, and how can we get to total inclusion to try and dispel this notion of how black women are portrayed?
Well, black women are usually typically seen in two extremes. Either they are over fetishized, over sexualized, or they are, for lack of a better word, just kind of out there, the party girl, celebrative, or they're portrayed as perhaps asexual, the mammy type, and there has to be a happy medium because most of us fall right in between that. We are not a monolith, and I think that we are often viewed as a monolith. And I had this conversation with Marissa earlier, who I've just met tonight, but we were saying that you can ask one black woman, many black women one question and get several different responses based on our own perspective, but often we're viewed as having the same opinions and attitudes. So when I came to the UK for the first time, I didn't understand, because pretty much in America, we're black people, right? Foundational black Americans, we're just all lumped in together. But over here, I had to learn that there are British Africans, British Caribbean, and within the Caribbean community, there's different islands represented. And I was like, wow. And I was alone. I didn't fit into any of them. So I think what happens is that we are isolated into pockets, like Marissa said, that we struggle to identify with one side or the other. But then oftentimes if we identify with one side, the other side harasses us for that. And if we identify with the other side harasses us for that. And we just feel like we're flicked back and forth like a ping pong ball. But inclusivity is not up to us. We cannot control whether we are included or not. That's up to the companies and organizations that drive the power to make the rules and the regulations and the policies that include us. Because there's this unspoken thing that black people are complacent with being discriminated against, with being harassed and oppressed. I'm going to tell you, if we could get rid of racism, we would have done it a long time ago. So I think that we need to push back a little bit and stop wondering on how we can be more inclusive and really put the responsibility where it should be. How can these organizations grow and change to be more inclusive?
Thank you. And Hasna?
I think, that's very, interesting. I think so we're talking about the sort of portrayal of women, and I think black women, and I think the issue is othering. I think that's an issue, and it's not really just for black women. I think it's diversity. What's the word I'm looking for? Minorities in general. It's sort of othering, separation, divisiveness, and that brings in a lack of sort of community and cohesion. And I think that's very important because this sort of othering is not normal, like at all. Like if we look at the origins of race and the origins of the oppressions of women, like race or racialization was invented during the slave trade in order to justify the inhumanity of the process. And that was done in order to justify in order for the economic gains of those countries. And if you look at the origins of women's oppression, now they say it's due, hugely in academia, they're saying it's due to the development of surplus, and marriage is sort of the marriage is for paternity and kind of the passing on of property and all these different things. This is not natural. None of it is biological. This is actually just a reflection of the economic environment in which we were at the time. And so I think when we look at oppression and we look at tackling oppression, we need to look at its origins, because then we need to look at what that means. And so if we look at its origins and we consider it sort of the economic factor, we have to start looking at how we're going to change, or what we can do in terms of with society in order to address these things. And one of the things that I would say is that if these are the conditions in which we have hostilities, like if we have a society where we all have access to decent housing, education, healthcare, full employment, all these different things, where would there be space for hostility? Like, where would you have a chance to say other someone? And what would be the point of othering someone? Hostility is born of scarcity, and we have to address that issue. I think it's also important to look at how collective action kind of brings people together and gets them to, I guess, think about things communally. For instance, example for me is sort of, I'm from Sudan, and we had a revolution in 2019. And like every single year we've had demonstrations, and the difference with the one in 2019 was that that was the time when everyone from all the different regions of Sudan, not all the different regions, but the majority came together, and they were chanting things like, "We are all Darfuris," which was unexpected because there is such a divide between the center. And then also during the demonstrations, the Christians were standing there whilst the Muslims were being able to pray. The women were suddenly taken front and center. They were protesting and all these different things. And that's a big thing in Sudan because the rights of women has been scaled back. So in my mum's time, my mum was walking around in a miniskirt, whereas I have to go around wearing a headscarf. It's very, very different. And through that unity and through that coming together and through that all the different things, they toppled the 30-year dictatorship. And not just once, they did it twice. They tried to bring in another government, and in 4 days they toppled it again. So my issue with sort of the representation of black women is the othering and the segregation. And the fact is that we are stronger in collectively. Like we see it even at the moment, like the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, they all get it. They've unionized, I mean, they always had a union, but like they've gone out and they've come together. They haven't been like black nurses, female nurses, but they've come together. For some reason in the UK, we don't have an engineering union. I'm not sure why. But yeah, othering, that's the issue.
Yeah, I think the concept of othering is quite an interesting one. There's quite a lot that's been written about this concept of othering. You know, it's not down to us, it's down to the others. It's not there's no change that we can make. It's if the others acted differently, then we may be able to act differently. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you know, it's how we can try and be more inclusive in our approach. Before I go to a question in the room, I'm conscious I just want Jonathan also to feel like he's part of this conversation and that he's not just been brought here as a token man to sit up there. That's not the case at all, no. And firstly, I just want to say a big thank you to Jonathan. He flew in at last minute because unfortunately one of our other panellists cancelled. And we are really pleased and pleasured to have you here. So that's why I want to make sure that your voice is heard as well. But how can we celebrate black women beyond Black History Month and beyond October 2023?
Okay, thanks for the question, Margot. I feel if I get this question wrong, I don't know if I'll strategically put in the middle, but if I get this question wrong, I feel I'm going to get flack from...
You're going to get nothing but support, that's what you're going to get.
So, no, that's a great question, and I feel like an imposter when I answer this question because I feel I don't do enough to celebrate black women, because I think the main advocates for that celebration of black women are actually black men, and that we actually need to do a better job in celebrating our sisters, our mothers, our daughters. And I was thinking about my daughter and how I can sort of celebrate and support her, and I'm going to answer from sort of that context. I think it's a bit of an understanding, and I think that's why the term intersectionality is very powerful, because I grew up, I had two younger brothers. My dad is traditional African. Oh, men have to be this way, blah, blah. And there's not a lot of understanding, because even in that context, especially the home environment, a lot of black women, even though they're strong women outside the home, in the home they sort of feel that I have to conform to traditional family social values, and therefore you don't essentially see that strength at home. It's not the case in my home, because my daughter cannot stop talking to me and telling me what she wants. On my hair in pigtails, I want my hair this, so I've had to understand. I did research the other day about black hair, watching YouTube videos, and I'm like, oh wow, so much goes into that. And you see, and that's the understanding. And then after taking ages learning how to do her hair, and then she goes to, we live in Surrey, she goes to school and you see another white boy trying to touch the hair, and I'm like, don't touch black women's hair. What are you doing? So it's about enabling them to have a voice, enabling them to speak out, seeing how you can support them, and just learning to discard a lot of the views that you have had in your upbringing, and to make it a big deal for them. You know what I mean? When you're celebrating their accomplishments, don't just say, hey, well done. Make it a big deal, because it is difficult. Listening to all the other panelists here talk about their experiencing, it's a lonely place to be. It is difficult because you don't see enough successful black women. We were doing, with the AFBE, we were doing an event where we were doing the International Women in Engineering Day. And I was looking for black female voices to have a conversation, chartered engineers. And even then, it was so difficult. There are a lot of us, but to go out there and to, you know what I mean? I was running out of people to actually reach out to and tap on. And to me, that was saying something. That was saying either there are not enough of us in this space, or a lot of us aren't able to continue in that journey and feel supported in that journey to get to where we want to get to. So I think the best way to celebrate black women is to be able to be allies that are invited and to support them. I hope I got that right.
You did.
All right, cool. All right, well done.
It's okay, you're going to get pats on the back tonight. But I think it's quite a good point in terms of, how do you continue to celebrate this past Black History Month? Because it's a month, but as Kate said at the beginning, this isn't just about history for 1 month, it's about all of our history, and how do we try to support it? I think this will come out in part of the next question, but from that point that you made, I've certainly been in organisations where people have felt like they don't want to speak up, because if they challenge the norm, then they may be looked at differently by their employer or by their peers. I'm going to come on to a question in a minute about code switching and the impact that that has in terms of people wanting to speak up but concerned about the impact that it has on them. But before I do that, I just want to see if there are any questions. There's a couple of questions I've got online, and are there any questions in the room? Whilst everyone in the room warms up, I'm going to keep us going with some of the questions online. One of the questions is, can the panelists share some challenges they face trying to drive through some of the diversity and inclusion work they've been involved with? And just because of time, I'm going to limit you all to one challenge each so that I can hear from all of you. And you've got about 1 minute to do your story. So who wants to go first? Marissa.
I would say perhaps the biggest challenge for me is pushback from my own community when I'm trying to do something different or out of the box. That's really frustrating, because I think, especially we live in a different country. We've all moved here, and we've got to do things differently. We can't do it the same, and it isn't about conforming. It's not that at all, but it's about creating a whole new world for us. And I find it pretty painful. So I'm the ambassador for Notting Hill Carnival, and sometimes I find it incredibly difficult getting my diaspora to see things in a different way in order for us to grow.
Okay, it's a good one. Thank you. Hasna?
I should have been thinking all the time.
Okay. Jonathan, we'll come back to you, Hasna.
I think the challenge in the work we do in the AFB sometimes is when a lot of organizations look at diversity or what they want to do, they look at it, they break it down into gender, race, neurodiversity, queerness, not really understanding that the conversation around diversity is to have different intersectional views and different voices. When you look at gender, for example, the voice feelings sort of, go up to that level, or how does it sort of, trickle up? And I think, the conversations that we sort of had in that debate were around finding your allies, finding people that understand, because it's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe they just don't understand, and if we can try to get a bit of the culture forming on a lower level, it might create some change where some of them are brought up to the, I don't know. It was a conversation that we're having, so we kind of left it at that.
So we're just getting active feedback during the time.
Yes.
that Jonathan's
No,
speaking
please
right
do,
there.
because we didn't know how to answer that question, to be completely honest, right?
But
So-
good, you're going to start a debate now. So Dr.
Yes.
Carlette, over to you.
No, I was with you until
I just-
I was riding along with you until you said maybe they don't understand, because
Yeah.
in 2023 people
Yes.
understand, and if they don't understand, it's because they don't want to, because there's study after study after study that generates findings, that regurgitates reports. There's the news, there's Facebook.
I agree. I'm back on board with you, definitely.
So I think in saying that people don't understand on October, what's today?
17th.
The 17th, 2023, to say that people don't understand is giving them a pass. And we need to stop doing that, because we're only going to have change if we hold people accountable for their actions. And by saying that they don't understand is giving them a pass. So I was with you with the rest of the way.
No, but I agree. But we were just conscious, basically, to just just understand around the whole thing, because I work for myself because I was not able to deal with the microaggressions in my workplace, and I left to do my own thing. In London at this point, it is difficult to pay your rent and stuff like that, and you don't really want to say be an activist in your workplace. Just if it's not working for you, move to somewhere that is working for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I guess that point there around microaggressions and wanting everyone to feel included, because you don't necessarily want those that don't feel included to lead to going somewhere else,
Yeah.
because actually you want for there to be allyship, for there to be a leaning in approach and support. And I guess it's how can we continue this conversation, which I know Nikke will be summarising shortly, but continuing the conversation so that there can be more of a lean in and an opportunity to learn, so that we keep the conversation going and we can actually strike up that inclusive approach. I do have quite a few more questions online, and I've got some questions in the room, so I'm just checking the time in terms of how I'm doing, but I think I'm all right at the moment. I guess a key question is, you said earlier about code switching, Dr. Carlette, and it's something that I think we need to think about in the room. But, just in terms of, can you explain what code switching is to the room?
I came with
But
a
also just in
definition,
terms
yes.
of practical advice you would offer for how we can be, or how everyone can be more inclusive in their approach.
I wanted to make sure I got this right, so I did write the definition down. So code switching is a tactic that has been passed down through generations of Black people. Its rules indicate what not to do in specific situations, how to address people in a specific tone of voice, making sure they are aware you mean business, but also that you are not labeled as aggressive. It is used by the Black community to eliminate bias and stereotypes toward us, especially in non-Black dominant spaces, because we know that certain parts of our identity are unwelcome in professional settings. So for example, hey girl, what's up? I'm so tired. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. What's up, girl?
I'm all right, sis.
Yes, sis.
Okay,
Yes,
next
sister.
one.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily walk in the boardroom and greet you like that, because
how
I know.
would you greet me in the boardroom?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing
today?
lovely, darling.
Okay, great.
So this is basically what code switching is. Hey, girl, you looking fly. It's just switching up your dialect or your pattern of speech, the way you might express yourself in your comfort zone, in your comfortable environment. Like, oh, girl, I'm just loving what you got on over there. I don't necessarily use proper English, although I know how to speak proper English. It's just a level of comfort that you feel within your own environment. And this is really important when it comes to Black people in general. when we are not if we are not in our own groups or environment at the time, we often feel very pressured that we will be judged on the way we speak or the way we dress. And so we have to switch, and we have to sit up a little more properly, and we have to be mindful not to get angry, moderate our responses, and this is what code switching is.
And how would you say people can overcome it?
Well, I'm always an advocate for being yourself. Again, in my speech, I said I embrace the angry Black woman because I don't want to feel suppressed in my emotions. However, just like he said, you have to make that decision of whether that's going to affect your paycheck. If you're going to get fired or labeled or othered because you are being yourself. And this is the pressure that we face that leads to racial trauma on a daily basis. So just trying to fight who you really are and present yourself as something different is traumatic.
Okay, thank you. We have a question in the room. So I'm going to go to that question before I then ask one more question to the panelists.
Really interesting debate. Thank you very much. Over the past few years, the EDI industry has tried to roll out training which has been described as unconscious bias training in corporate environments. Just picking up on your point around awareness, should we change the name of unconscious bias training and call it something different?
Thank you. And that question was asked by Joseph Otu, fantastic lawyer in the legal team.
Thank you, Margot.
That's okay, just had to drop it in there. Just so everyone online could know who asked the question. But, I know everyone has an opinion on this. Hasna.
I think that in the way that that you change society is not necessarily through changing behavior and ideas. I think it's more through changing the material conditions with which people exist. And I think that training is very good, but it's something that you said about sort of not being able to make rent and all these different things, is that you can create a utopia within ARUP where everything is sort of, we've ticked all the boxes and everything, but once you leave ARUP, we don't live in a utopia. We are dealing with the cost of living crisis, we are dealing with rent, we are dealing with all these different things. And these issues and stresses are going to create issues and stresses at work, whether you try to avoid it or not. And so changing behavior and changing the way you think, like historically, that's not even how we developed as humans. We developed as humans through labor, we developed through like even language. Language was in order for us to be able to communicate labor so that we can create food and all these different things. It wasn't sort of ideas. I feel like I should go into more detail about that, but I also feel like I've lost the crowd. So let me just, we'll go back to later. But basically, I think you need to change the material conditions in order to change the ideas, not changing the ideas to change the material conditions. And you see that a lot even with activist movements, in the sense of like, we had BLM that came around in 2013, and it was very much just sort of, there's a few bad apples and all these different things. But when it came around again in 2020, it found that actually it's a structural issue. It's an issue with the police force and what they, and how, and everything about that. And that was through sort of like going through the activist struggle and seeing the limitations of that and pushing forwards. I hope that made sense, but yeah.
Dr. Carlett, I know you want to say something.
No, I was just thinking about the question and unconscious bias, and you know, I don't like that term. It's racism, and I think a lot of times terms are watered down so that they're more palatable for people. And we need to continue to call it exactly what it is, because if we don't, it loses its urgency. And I think this whole unconscious bias thing was created just so we can avoid saying racism and calling it exactly what it is. And there are a lot of terms, even racism itself has been watered down in its definition, in its true sociological definition. So I wouldn't ever conduct an unconscious bias training, and if I was approached by a client, I would probably ask to change the name of it because I just don't feel like it adequately describes what we need to talk about.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to work out whether everyone can hear us online.
This one's already on.
Sorry about that. I'm getting live feeds about not being loud enough, so I'm just trying to make sure that everyone can hear us both online and in the room. So back to my questions. I'm going to ask two more. So there was a really good one that came up online, which is, what does meaningful allyship support in the moment look like for you? And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to give me a view on that. And I guess I ask the question also because as we think about the continuing work we want to do in this area past this month and with AFBE, it's really important that we can start to, make a move in terms of what does allyship mean? How can we seize upon that moment and help people to know what allyship means? So what does it mean to you in the moment for it to be demonstrated? Jonathan?
Yeah, okay. What does, okay, so the work we do actually transcends past October. Like, we are the Association of Black, Minority and Ethnic Engineers all throughout the year, not just October. We get asked to do a lot of stuff in October, but the conversation actually is year-round, and what we try to do is push that dialogue. We spend a lot of time trying to push the dialogue outside of October, but we just end up doing a lot of it there. But what we tend to do, or what allyship for us as an organization sort of looks like, is when we have organizations that are trying to support us and not just trying to extract. So it's not a transactional relationship to say, hey, I have paid or donated something to you, give me something. I think what we try to have is a collaboration process where we say, look, if you genuinely want to make change and if you genuinely want to, I don't know, increase your diversity or your perspective around diversity, bring us in, have a couple of conversations, and participate in the events and the dialogue that we do. Like, for example, this. And that's a way that we feel allyship works sort of for us as an organization.
Okay, great, thank you. Marissa?
I recently had a conversation with someone about this, actually. And what we came up with is what's next, right? That was the whole discussion. So where do we go from here? We've heard this story before, and it will never get old. And it's important to hear the story over and over again. It's important to share it. But we have heard this story before, so where do we go from this point forward? And one of the things we were talking about is what I would really like to see is for us to have panels put together, yes, but panels of, so we have a tech panel, for example, and on that tech panel, it is all colored black beam. Or beam, whichever is the term, but you have the entire panel. It's all minority. What's the point of this? The point is that they're all experts, and what they're talking about is not necessarily the hardships of getting there, although that is important. I do not take that away. But what they're talking about is this is where we think that we can go forward in technology, and do that again with medical care. So you have a health tech panel, and it's all doctors and nurses, but they're all from minority. And what they're talking about, what they're focusing on, is what we can do together to take health forward. You have a massive AI summit coming up at the beginning of next month. you have a panel of cybersecurity people or minority. And that's the way I think about it. How can we get together to talk about what is next and do it in such a way where you leave the panel with a plan, a real tangible plan?
And I guess what you're saying there is not just having all black panels when it's Black History Month, that you know, it can be for any issue that is being encountered.
Absolutely.
100%, yeah.
Interesting. Hasna.
In terms of allyship, I'm going to be honest, I hate that word. I don't think you should be allowed to let people to opt in and out of a situation. Like, it involves all of us. Like, an injury to one is an injury to all, and that's something that we have to realize. And also, if we address one form of oppression, what is, like, if you're addressing one form of oppression as in isolation, then more often than not, that is just going to be offset onto the next person. For instance, migrant workers or people in precarious situations. So you have to address everything at the same time. And I think, I can't remember who said it, but this is something I always think about, where someone said that the metric with which to judge society is the conditions of the most oppressed in society. And once you emancipate the most oppressed in society, you will truly have a just society. So this involves all of us. Like, all of us have to get involved. And the fact is, like, yes, we have all these separate things that we need based on our particular identity, but in reality, we all want the same thing. And I said this before in terms of we all want housing, healthcare, safety, education, full employment. We all want the same thing. And that's something that we should, definitely aim for. And I think it's, for instance, like, we can work towards sort of closing the gender pay gap. And that's very sort of laudable. But the thing is, we can also work for everyone having comfortable, dignified existence on this planet. And I think that is huge, absolutely huge. And from that point where we're all sort of comfortable, who knows where we could be, where we're not constantly thinking about rent, we're not constantly thinking about cost of living crisis. We'd be completely different. I mean, we'd be able to bring our best foot forward to work. Because so many people, like, I know so many people are coming up to work and they're living in, like, packed like sardines in these flats, especially early careers. And that's something that's really important. And also, once you remove that sort of stress and anxiety and scarcity, as I said before, where would there be space for hostility? So, yeah, I think that we need to think about things collectively. I think that in order to overcome one form of oppression, you have to overcome all of them at the same time. I think that there's no such thing as opting in and opting out. Like, we are all, I was going to say something really cheesy, we are all one people. But, like, but yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Thank you. I'm not going to come to you on this question. But, no, not because I don't want to hurt you, but it's a point you made earlier about allyship, whether we like the word or not. It is an active, it's a verb, it's a doing word. Yeah. It's actively doing something. Yes. And the only reason I'm not going to come to you is because I only have time for one more question. I'm going to eke it in before we hand to Nikkei. It was, what trailblazing black women have shaped you personally, professionally, or culturally? I'm going to start with you.
Harriet Tubman. Every time I'm asked that question, it's the same. She created the Underground Railroad. She saved 1,000 people from enslavement, and her resilience is, it's just unimaginable. She went into danger knowing that she could die, and dragged people to freedom. And so when I'm, complaining about my internet is down and I don't want to get up and go to work and, I got a toothache or whatever, I have a picture of her. And she reminds me of exactly what resilience really, really, really means. And, oftentimes you see if you could invite one person living or dead, to have dinner with, who would it be? And it's always been Harriet Tubman.
Great, thank you. Jonathan?
I would say if there's a black woman that's inspired me, it's been my colleague and founder, Dr. Nikkei Folayan, because everyone sees her everywhere and doesn't realize what's behind the facade. As we talked about, like, yes, I'm a strong black woman, and that's what everybody sees. but the amount of work and the amount that someone has to do in terms of anxiety, reliving your trauma every time you're sharing your experiences and things like that to tell the story of how you got to where you got to. And to be able to see that and to be able to work with someone who is always okay and always working and always like, hey, this is not like, and, you know, to me that's a real, you know, a real strong perspective to look at and to appreciate.
Okay. I am being told that I've run out of time, but I'm going to quickly ask you just to say yours because I can eke out one more minute before I actually get to hand on to the fantastic Nikke, who I have known for over a decade now, and so it's really a pleasure to actually introduce her. So, sorry, very quickly, Hasna.
Very quickly, in the spirit of collectivism, I'm going to say all black women.
And Marissa?
I'm afraid mine's rather cheesy. It'll be my mum, because my mum she's about this high, very powerful. But she gave me no excuses to be the very best that I can be.
Awesome. Fantastic. All fantastic answers there. So we're going to close with a keynote speaker as well. And I'd like to introduce up to the speaker and to the stand Dr. Nikke Folian. I know I haven't pronounced that correctly, have I? So Nikke is the co-founder of AFBE and Hulls and MBE. I came across her, it is over 10 years ago now. And when she started AFBE, which she started with her brother, she's also an MBE. She is a force to be reckoned with. A chartered electronics engineer with a doctorate in electronics engineering. She's a technical director and a technical discipline leader for communications and control within WSP, which is also another engineering consultancy, in case anyone didn't know in the room. Nikke leads a team of telecommunications engineers on a variety of projects and throughout the world, in particular in UK, Australia, Middle East and Africa. She chairs AFB UK, as I said, with her brother, who is also another force to be reckoned with. They are quite the powerhouse, and your parents must be very proud. She's a trustee at the Engineering UK and STEM Futures. And, you know, AFB UK is a not-for-profit organisation which promotes higher achievement in engineering and education amongst people of black and ethnic minority backgrounds in the UK. As a trustee of the Institute of Engineering and Technology, Engineering UK and the STEM Futures, she's held previous appointments that are, in a way, too long to list. But all I can say is, when I first came across Nikke, she was talking about how we can lift up engineering, and not just in the engineering sector, but also how we can focus on educating from the grassroots and making sure that organisations, professional services organisations, and working with government can support people that want to get into the profession, but also how you can retain people and make sure that they are properly supported. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce her to close us on tonight's session.
Thank you so much. First thing I'd say is, what an amazing, amazing session. What an amazing keynote speaker. Can we just... spitting facts here. These are facts you've got to know. And the panel, just amazing to hear your stories. I'm just going to do a really quick summary of my takeaways today. The first thing that struck me was what you said around the challenges and the similarities between women in the UK and women in America. That struck me because sometimes we forget that these struggles that we have are not just limited to our own little space. It's happening to a massive group of people that are experiencing the same things, just in different scenarios and different environments. And then talking about belonging, really important. Talking about reactive inclusion, which happened when obviously people realized there were only 25 women professors, I think, in academia, and that reactive inclusion rather than actually thinking about it longer term. And then the label of a strong black woman, which I have, as you can imagine, encountered. And I don't want to be strong most days, I can assure you. So I really could relate to what you were saying there. And then we went on to talk about what Marissa said, which really struck me around, I don't feel proud, I feel lonely. Let's just think about that for a minute. I don't feel proud, I feel lonely. What are we as organizations going to do to change it for others? To ensure that people come into spaces and don't feel lonely because they're the only one? How are we going to change that? Hasna, you talked about thinking beyond representation. And that's really important because half the time the struggle is saying, oh, we have one of, now we have so many okay, it's not political, but we have so many wonderful representation in the government, so we should all be happy. And it's beyond representation. About women, about black women not being a monolith, because that's the assumption most of the time, even when we don't say it out loud. One of the questions that I'm taking away today is, how can organizations grow and change, and really change to be more inclusive? How can we help discard views of how black women should be in organizations? How can we change the idea that people need to code switch to fit in our environments? How can we stop saying unconscious bias? That really annoys me. Because someone once said to me, apart from if you're actually unconscious, it is not unconscious. How can we develop meaningful allyship? It's a quote by Ollie. He says, champions can only go so far without allies. So as many of us as are champions here for inclusion, we need the allies. And understanding that allyship is not a badge, but a battle scar is really important. Allies will get it wrong and should be comfortable with listening to the fact that they've got it wrong. That's really important. And yeah, so I've taken so much from today. You've heard it all. I'm not going to repeat anymore, but I have thoroughly enjoyed the session. You've been an amazing host. I've had people messaging about you particularly, actually. So thank you for this opportunity, ARUP. I also got to meet Sharon, who is sort of I'm a fan of Sharon, so I got to meet her today. We talked for a long time, but it was actually fantastic to meet her today because she represents something that a lot of us may not, a lot of black females will identify in this space called engineering, of leadership, of growth. And I want to end with the fact that we are continuing this conversation with ARUP, and we'll invite people from the organizations that we work with at AFBE. I've been talking to Jonathan, and I've been talking to Rachel about what we want to do together to continue this conversation so that we can turn the things that we've heard today into actual action that changes our industry. And finally, I want to plug AFBE Live. You talked about a group of people from a particular profession coming together and doing sessions and so on. And we had our first, sponsored by ARUP as well, we had our first national conference last year at the IET with 500 people. And I've never seen an engineering environment with so much social skills, because as we know, engineers have no social skills. So I'm encouraging you to look out for it. It's in 23rd of April, 2024. But in the meantime, let us start to think about how we as a collective and we as individuals can change it and make the world more inclusive for everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. I think tonight has been an amazing evening. I've enjoyed it so much. I've been blown away by the panel and the general discussion that we've had. And as Nico said, we don't intend to kind of just leave it at that. We do intend to kind of take this conversation forward in a workshop. So I just want to encourage you. You've got a QR code next to you to put in what you'd like to see change, what you'd like to commit to personally in yourself to change things tomorrow. So I encourage you to do that. I don't know whether we've got a word cloud or is it too... Oh, okay. We'll put it up on the screen so you can see the word cloud of what people are actually saying they want to commit to. So I just want us to put our hands together before we go and have drink, wine, and some really nice West Indian and African food that we've got here. So you'll be able to judge and see if we've got it right with the catering. Give us marks out of 10 for the jollof rice. So just want you to put your hands together again for the wonderful panellists and for Margot for chairing.
Before we go there, because I also think we need to say thank you to Sharon and also everyone on Race Connect who has helped in Connect Race trying to put together this event. There's a lot of people that do it behind the scenes. You know, there's a lot of preparation that goes into a day like today. So everyone that has helped, could I ask you to stand up, please, so that you can also get a round of applause. Thank you. And that includes you, Sharon.
Okay, the floor's open. Go drink and be merry.
Nice meeting you.